Welcome to our video, Sun in the 8th house, or as we like to call it, the Scorpio house. Ooh, mysterious and bound to get us more views. This is the first video ever, maybe, for a Sun in the 8th house, by a Sun in the 8th house. And her friend.
Hello! And welcome back to Party Chick Astrology. I'm Nina.
I'm Shaina.
And what is this?
Oh.
A dedicated video to Sun in the 8th house?
I guess it is. I don't know.
We just had a lot to say. We haven't had much of a format that is consistent anyway, so
we made a separate video about Nina's specific placement, which is the sun, which is this video.
In the 8th house.
Yeah, and Uranus, which is my placement, which will be linked down below if you're curious. And also all of the other placements will be linked down below once they're up.
So before you're like, how dare you not do Moon in the 8th house, and whatever your thing is, they're all coming. They'll all be here. Patience, young grasshoppers. A lot of what there is to be said about Sun in the 8th house, you can also garner from or glean from our
Is it like word of the day? Like rip-off calendar?
I always say glean because people are like, how do you get clients? Or like, what's with your business? Like, oh, we sell readings and we have a YouTube channel and we glean our clientele from that. That's what I say.
Oh, we glean
it.
Y'all have been
gleaned. Should I start over?
No, I love it.
So yeah, a lot of what there is to be said about Sun in the 8th house, you can also glean from our 8th house video, because we talk a lot about being kind of an 8th house person.
Yeah.
And if you have Sun in the 8th house, you are for sure an 8th house person. But specifically with the Sun in the 8th house, first of all, there's the fact that the Sun is a luminary, the brighter luminary of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really illuminating the 8th house. So a lot of those themes of seeing in the darkness are very big. But at the same time, the 8th house is what's hidden, and your Sun, while shining up the 8th house, is being hidden inside the 8th house. Feeling like you need to hide your true nature. And it's a little hard for me to differentiate because I do have my Sun in Aquarius, where typically Aquarius suns will feel like outcasts and feel like their true nature isn't accepted. Sun in the 8th house speaks also to just this kind of, honestly, lack of confidence in your individuality, this lack of feeling accepted for your individuality, and therefore creates this retreat of your true nature. Someone actually wrote in a comment in the previous 8th house video, I'm loosely quoting someone, that you can see things in the 8th house as how you would treat your genitals, because everyone has them but no one talks about them.
Right.
So it's like treating your ego as your genitals. Like, don't talk about it, don't share it.
And I think that comes from, like, as a kid, whenever you'd show your ego, whenever you'd express yourself, it would be shunned, and you would be like, oh, I can't do that, I need to stuff it away. And whenever it comes out, it was almost maybe too much.
The 8th house has a very, that's not okay.
Yeah, exactly.
To it.
Yeah.
You know, or like, that shouldn't be shown.
Yeah, hide that. Don't let us see that.
And it can show up differently depending on what sign your Sun in the 8th house is in, obviously. I am a first-generation American, but growing up, I just had like a lot of isms that were not American and were like weird and strange. And people were like, don't do that, hide that. So a lot of my true nature I find hidden. That might be a theme of people who feel like they don't belong, like, I don't want to compare myself to mixed race people, but I do kind of like empathize with people who are mixed race and express the struggle of like, I don't belong to either. It's like I'm not American enough, but in Brazil I am American. So you know,
in Brazil you're not Brazilian, you're American.
Exactly.
But also you're Brazilian.
So it's like, what is my true nature? Whatever it is, it's very personal. I feel like I have to hide it. I have honestly just a very hard time expressing myself to other people in general, even very close people. I have a really big fear, the 8th house is fear of people honestly being true to myself to other people. As an 8th house Sun, probably ingrained in you of like, that's not okay, don't go showing that around.
Yeah.
It's like when you're a kid and you're like, look at that! Whatever the fuck you have down there, look at it! And people are like, honey, no.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But that's like
You with everything
your
about
ego.
you.
Your personality.
You're like, I'm Nina. Oh, no.
Let's not do that. But on top of that, there's the side of the 8th house that is sharing things. There's a side of the 8th house that is sex. There's a side of
that joint relationship.
Yes. There's a side of the 8th house that is money. The sun also typically represents the father, and this isn't like as explicitly mentioned in many other house placement interpretations, but in sun in the 8th house, people will often bring up a death of the father, or an inheritance from the father. Sometimes monetarily, obviously, because that's something that the 8th house rules. A lot of times also spiritual or psychic inheritances, because if you have your sun in the 8th house, you probably find yourself to be a very empathetic, sympathetic, compassionate, and in that way kind of psychic feeling type of person, because that is all in the realm of the 8th house. Also a very natural psychologist, so a lot of people come to you with their problems and you kind of share the pain of others, because it's the 8th house is sharing and the 8th house is pain. So naturally, with your sun in the 8th house, someone sees you as someone that they can share their pain with.
About that, like from the other side, if I were to express something to Nina that's like some like 8th house of an 8th house matter, people with 8th house suns or just an 8th house person are great at making you feel comfortable with it. Like if you go to them, like someone's gonna be like and be erratic and like this ridiculous things, an 8th house person is so used to those matters and so used to the chaos and the turmoil, and I've been surrounded by it their whole life, that to them it is normal, and there's that comfort and the compassion that comes from like, you're not alone, I understand this. That's why everybody wants to go to an 8th house sun with their problems, is because they don't feel weird about it. It doesn't feel as taboo, it doesn't feel as isolating, because that 8th house person has dealt with so many things around those topics. Also, back to the whole like the sun thing representing the father, if it's not an inheritance or death, it's just like daddy issues.
Right. So I should say death isn't always literal. So an absence.
Yeah.
Oftentimes. Because it's the thing of, it's the house of hidden things. So you feel like your father's hidden from you for some reason.
Maybe your dad neglected your ego and didn't build you up, and so you might have a weird relationship with other strong male figures. Like this is why it squares Leo, like they're big shows of ego and stuff like that. And at the same coin, you also want that power, because 8th house is about power and the sun is about power. So you want the power that they have, but it's something that you were probably never shown or given.
Yeah, to get like just real personal, my dad traveled for the majority of my childhood, but so that's where kind of the absence I experienced, and it really affected me a lot. I was very hurt by it.
Yeah, 8th house suns are not going to be the kind of people that you'll feel like, oh yeah, I didn't have a dad, but it was okay.
Yeah.
No, these people are going to be very affected by their lack of like a strong father or a strong male figure.
Yes. And another thing is that my dad has been sick my whole life. My dad quite literally has made me very aware of the imminence of death, because I'm not like, oh, he's gonna die any day now, but it's just like a very physical manifestation of the fragility of life. Another thing about sun in the 8th house is there was probably a death or a handful of deaths that you experienced from a young age, or at least a relatively young age, that has probably influenced you and shaped your character a lot. You know, some kids like come back to school from summer like, oh yeah, this summer my grandpa passed away, but he was old, you know, and he doesn't is not going to behave that way. Even in my like Aquarius sun detached kind of way, I was just like, and also my awareness of like, this is going to happen. Like my grandfather passed away when I was 11, and that first of all was such a big ordeal because it happened internationally. So it was being in Brazil for 3 months and then having my grandma come over and live with us so it first of all was made into a very big ordeal. Not that death otherwise isn't a big ordeal.
But it really did take over your life.
Yeah, and really affected me emotionally to a point where I've, you know, obviously to the point of no return. And then when I was 17, I lost a very good friend of mine. I was even more aware of how much that impacted me. And you think like 17, that's not young, but in terms of human life, and at that point of development as a person, that is something that affected me and shaped my character to the point where of no return again.
And also, any age that you are that you lose somebody that's very important to you, that is a very sporadic death or like a very unexpected death, it's going to make a huge impact. It doesn't matter whether you're 17 or 45. It's still going to heavily impact you, as an 8th house sun, it's going to impact you all the more, because somebody dying will affect you almost in the fact that you have to go through your own death as well to be able to come to terms with it.
And there is also that kind of sense of rebirth, which in a way has left me feeling quite guilty. Those events have made me stronger and have made me grown into a stronger and better person, which obviously leaves me with a lot of guilt, because I'm like, those people had to die for me to become a better person.
Like, tragedy has to happen for you to grow stronger, which is very unfortunate about the 8th house.
But death and rebirth go hand in hand. That was very personal.
So just in general, your life has a lot of themes, like Sun in the 8th house, a lot of themes and a lot of Scorpio stuff. Death, regeneration, occult matters. These are people that are going to be able to touch into all that kind of weird witchy stuff and really have much more of a natural intuition when it comes to those things. And these are people that are going to have more paranormal sightings than people, or just be more aware of that stuff. You have to be told about the paranormal to know about the paranormal.
My whole life I just have found myself more easily in situations to deal with spirituality, even astrology. Growing up, I had more like knowledge and experience with astrology than most people, I think.
It's more of a natural ability to understand it,
And also sex. Sex is something that was introduced to me at a very young age. I actually asked in the last video, like, when do people typically learn about sex?
Did anyone comment?
Yeah, someone commented like 8th or 9th grade.
No.
Is when sex education happens.
Oh, yeah,
I guess that's true, but I knew it like definitely before I even entered kindergarten. I was like, I know what sex is. But and sex becomes a very important thing because you, with 8th house energy, view sex as the 8th house version of sex and not the 5th house version of sex. Sex to you is really about the merging of two people when to become one, and something that's very deep, intimate, important to you. Likely probably had traumatic experience with sex, experience with lots of things, like trauma is in your forecast.
Let's see, for trauma horoscope today is yes. Also, with an 8th house sun, you're going to be sexualized from a young age. People are going to be a little bit more forward than most people about how sexual you are, and you just naturally ooze it a little bit more.
Or develop early.
Everybody that I know with an 8th house sun went through puberty at a very young age, kind of was like that, the one, like, girl in the class that like had big tits, and all the guys were like, oh my god, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, that's the 8th house sun. These people find confidence from being sexy. They find confidence in expressing the taboo things, and especially expressing sexual energy. They also get praised for it, but also it's pitted against them as well. It's like very much a double-edged sword of like, you want to express the healthy sexuality and you want to have fun with it, but with how this world is, a lot of times it's going to be, attract the wrong people, or people just feel more entitled to you. You were shamed for it so much, so now you're, maybe you go the opposite way for a while because all people see is this, and you don't want, you're being shamed for it too much. Nina says this a lot, like when she was younger, she would like want attention from her hurting. Like, how do you you like, I'm wounded, like, you know what I mean?
I thought that was the 6th house man.
No, that's an 8th house sun thing. I think it's both, but I know another 8th house sun that I'm like, you do the same thing.
Oh yeah, when I was a kid, I'd make like makeshift casts.
Yeah.
And like pay attention to me.
Because that's how 8th house suns found that they got attention, was when they expressed how much pain they were in, or they helped other people with their pain. In a weird way, an 8th house sun is a little bit of a servant, in the sense of like, you feel better when you're helping other people through their pain.
And touching back to sex, also with your sun in the 8th house, you can feel like your worth is from how sexual you are,
how desirable you are.
There's kind of like the virgin whore dichotomy, right? And there's like no way to win in that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have the belief system of like, you want to be the virgin though. I always felt like I needed to up my
have more sex, be very experienced, be the sexual person.
Yeah, or just like that's what I need to prove. Maybe it's because my kids are rising too. It's just like she's virgin. Well, I get both. Like she's so virginal, but she's a whore. Because that's where you find like your worth.
Yeah.
And like your body also, maybe you feel the need, especially when you're younger, and I think a lot of people, regardless of 8th house sun, honestly, feel the need to like show off their body to prove their worth through their sexuality. But that's probably going to be a theme that you encounter as an 8th house sun.
Yeah. 8th house is also a house about joint finances and taxes. Something really funny this morning, I was actually watching a video from a girl with an 8th house sun, and randomly, it was not a vlog. She just starts crying about her taxes. And I was like, that is the most 8th house. She's just like, I know you guys this is weird, but like this really is very stressful for me. And about how it invokes way more anxiety than it should. And I was like, that's your 8th house sun, dude.
Yeah, but in the same token, is that something that you say? In the same vein, or on the opposite side of the spectrum, on the other side of the coin, on the other side of the token.
Okay.
But on the other end of the spectrum, you could actually find that you're very good at taxes, and it's something that you excel at, that you are naturally a good taxes person.
Yeah, well, you can be good at it, and also because you have so much anxiety about it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, they're gonna be on it because you're like, this is some serious shit that if you don't know is gonna catch up to you, it will catch up to you, you know?
Another thing that I will read about 8th house sun all the time is something along the lines of, your life gets better after marriage, or a good inheritance after marriage. So there's that to chew on. I've been chewing on it for 5 years. If anyone needs a green card, I'm just kidding.
And the reason, and like, you know, the only reason why they say that is because once you get married, your 7th house is fulfilled, and you're finally able to go into your 8th house, you're finally able to really meld with a person, and when you do find that soul deep connection, that melding is when you will rise from the ashes as the true phoenix you are and become the strongest person, because
you get to access your sun.
You get to access your sun, and an 8th house sun will have one of the biggest ego struggles in their life, but with anything in the 8th house, if you're able to really come out of that and take it around and turn, you can become one of the most confident, strongest, like powerful people. And who is it? Like Mother Teresa.
Yeah, Mother Teresa is a Leo sun in the 8th house.
Yeah,
Hilary Duff.
People. But also some really fucking scary people have this, so just depends on how you deal with it, how well aspected it is, what sign is it in, you know.
Yeah, with Mother Teresa, that's a perfect example of with great suffering and also detachment, like detachment from the physical and just like getting into the absolute minimalism. That's something that your life path is kind of calling for. It's just like minimalism, detachment, and I talked about
healthy detachment.
Yeah, healthy detachment, as in like hold on to things lightly.
Don't forget, but don't dwell.
Scorpio energy and its negative wants to hold on to things so tightly for fear of losing, and that's not the best way to go about it. You kind of just want to hold things lightly, and there's a lot of acceptance of death that you need to come into contact with. Something that we haven't mentioned yet also is just like growing up, you just became very aware of death.
Depression, displacement, definitely go through a lot more bouts of depression than most people from a younger age. And you use the word just like a melancholy. Or just kind of naturally surrounds you, which I think is kind of always around this like blanket of melancholy. You're just scared. A little bit of a fear always whenever you step outside your little cave.
I think the biggest thing is like fear of expressing yourself, fear of showing yourself, fear probably attached to not being enough, fear of loss, fear of abandonment. All of these are probably rooted to things that happened in your childhood. You know better than I do in terms of your own situation.
FK Twigs has a new single out called Cellophane, and I feel like it is just the feeling of that melancholy, like I'm Not Enough, 8th House Sun song, whatever, you can watch it. I'm sure you've already seen it. She's popular. 8th House Sun, from a young age, you're like, I'm sad, I don't know why. Not everybody. Sometimes you know why, but there's also those 8th House people that you don't know why. And I think that's another part of the 8th House is, why am I sad? Or why do I feel this way? And it can feel like you almost are looking for that traumatic event so that you can justify your feelings.
Yeah, we talked about that in the previous 8th House video.
But I think it's a very strong sun thing.
A lot of times that melancholy is in association with or in causation with, and I'm like being such a pretentious speaker today where I'm like just saying things
Gemini
that sound
season.
good.
It's just, you just say things that sound good.
Yeah, it's correlated with that feeling of isolation that you feel as an 8th house sun. So that's the general melancholy comes for a lot of reasons, but it's related to the feeling of isolation and the feeling of just like awareness of the melancholy of life gives you a melancholy. The melancholy isolates you from all the people having fun. Your awareness of the futility of life further melancholies you, and it's just an endless infinity of melancholia. 8th
house really likes to go down that path.
Yes.
So there's almost like you feed off of that. Like there is a little bit of like, at first, like of course you don't want to be there, but after a while it's like the only thing that fuels you. And it gets
comfortable.
Yeah,
anyone who's been depressed knows that it just feels comfortable to be depressed after a while. And that's the whole thing that I talk about all the time of being in the cave and your eyes adjust to the darkness, and so going out into the light, it stains your eyes. So that is Sun in the 8th house. Thanks for watching.
Uranus in the 8th house, which is my placement, will be coming next, and then we'll be having the 8th house planetary placements video coming. So buckle in. Got a lot of 8th house. That was me steering a little 8th house car down into hell.
Make sure to check out all the links going on below.
Yeah, all the blog posts and astrology course. And
I've always wondered what
what
YouTubers are like. I know that they're like pointing to the down bar, but I've always wondered what it feels like to just be like pointing at nothing. But I'm like really imagining the down bar. Like I have it.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, totally.
So there it is. I see it. Do you? Click, 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 click. Okay, bye.